Welcome. I'm attorney Louis Myers Jr. This is another edition to Beyond the Gun. I'll be right back with the beginning of the show.
Devontae Flanoy's family wants you to take a good look at something you may need to brace yourself for. Devontae's body in an open casket. This, they say, is what violence on the streets of Chicago really looks like. The 20-year-old had recently returned to Chicago from college in Georgia. He was gunned down in what police are calling a gang shooting.
He's a handsome young man, too. You know, a very handsome young man, and he got killed. You know, probably over some nonsense.
Welcome back to Beyond the Gun. I am delighted to have as my special guests two very close friends of mine, comrades in struggle, and two people that I admire tremendously. I want to welcome you to Beyond the Gun, a program that we have created and we've been working with now over the past 3 or 4 months, talking about, you can take from the name Beyond the Gun, where do we go beyond the shooting and the killings, and where do we go into the world to try and make a difference? I want to introduce Kelly Harris, Dr. Kelly Harris, PhD, and the head of the African American Studies Department at Chicago State University. Kim Delaney Harris, his lovely wife, and she is a faculty member at Chicago State University. She teaches a course there, but she has formerly taught in the African American Studies Department. And I just first of all want to let the audience know, we don't spend enough time talking about African American studies. That has kind of become a subsidiary issue of multiple other issues in the African American community. But Kelly, Dr. Harris, if we don't know who we are,
that's right,
then we don't have a sense of where we're going.
That's right.
And so when we get out and we're ducking and dodging bullets in the African American community like I am on the west side of Chicago, you know, I don't know who to blame.
Right.
And they don't understand that the magnificent work that you and Kelly and Kim, both that you have been doing, that makes a difference. But it makes a difference because through the African American Studies program at Chicago State, you've reached out. It has become a community center. You're working with other African American and African organizations to make a difference, teaching us who we are, how we got where we are, where we should be going. What does our history say about why we are in this predicament? So I just want to give you all such a tremendous compliment.
Thank you.
And thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Now let me start back. The most recent discussions that have been happening, Chicago State University has been on the news so much now until I'm disappointed when I pick up the Chicago Tribune and don't see Chicago State. I'm saying, Lord have mercy.
Right.
Nothing happens today.
Right.
I mean, give us an update. Everybody, you know, with the African American Studies Department being so important to the lifeblood of Chicago State. You've been working so hard to keep that institution open and alive, and you've been fighting, both you and Kim have been fighting, you know, for the survival of the students there. Tell us where that is, the both of you, and then we're gonna get into the African world and where we're headed.
Well, right now we have an interim president who was a former dean at the institution, Rachel Lindsay. So we're excited about that. And there's a lot of energy around the change in administration, and we feel like it might be going in the right direction. But we also recognize that the students and the faculty, we have to stay vigilant.
Does Chicago State have a future? I mean.
Oh, no question. No question.
Yeah, no, I need somebody to say that.
Yeah.
Because I hear so much negative.
Yeah. So the thing about Chicago State is we've still been doing the work. We never shut down. We never closed. So even in spite of the things that have been happening in the news, we've still been doing that work. We've still been teaching. The students have still been being active. Students are still winning awards, national awards, and placing high in different academic competitions. We still graduated the most black physicists of any other university in this country.
It still has one of the only, well, certainly predominantly black pharmacy schools.
That's right.
In the state of Illinois.
That's right. So we've still been doing all this.
You know,
The
an acupuncture center out
aquaponics.
there.
Aquaponics.
Look, I mean,
That's
Chicago
right.
State has an excellent business school, a number of
That's
Chicago
right.
State.
And we've still been having the community come up and do events and all kinds of things. We've had Emil Jones there. We're about to have Kurt Summers there. We have African Liberation Day on May 27th. We host the African Liberation Day, which we do every year. So we're still moving.
Kim, I know you were so involved from the day that I walked on that campus until the day that I walked off.
Okay.
You know, you were so instrumental in me staying there. You were so inspiring. I ain't prepared to leave Chicago State after the first year, but for what you done and what you had done and the marvelous words of encouragement that Kelly gave me. But at the end of the day, I want to thank you. Tell us where do you see it?
Well, we thank you for coming over there. You were a great attribute to Chicago State University for us to have you. The students were excited. You are part of our curriculum. We teach you in class.
Okay, that's right.
So we appreciate having you there so the students could actually engage you. For me, I think Chicago State absolutely has a future. I think we have to be careful to acknowledge that there have been changes made. We're happy about having the new interim dean. She's only the president, but she's only there for a year. And after a year, we're going to be getting a new president. I think the job isn't yet done because there's still some administration. Faculty is hopeful that some of that administration will still be cleaned up and changed in order to really affect change and really move us forward. The faculty is always doing the work, and the students are always doing the work. That remains constant. But I think we need a few more faculty changes in order for the place to be solid, right? And for our work not to be overshadowed by the mishaps of administration. We need a few more changes before this year is up, before we get the new person in, to give that person a
So
fair
if I
chance.
had to ask, so the public who's watching this program today, throughout the country on YouTube, on Facebook Live, Twitter, and on KNTV, Chicago State is alive?
Alive and ready.
All right, I wanted to get that out of the way today.
Yes.
And now let's move into the African American Studies Department program at Chicago State. What are you doing in terms of the Chicago community? What has been your vision in terms of working in the neighborhoods, bringing the story and the trajectory of African Americans in the world to our community? What are you doing? What's happening with the African American Studies program?
Well, you know, Lou, thanks for that. You know, when we came in, our program, we had a friend of ours, a good friend of ours, who did great work on ancient Egypt, and he would do hieroglyphics, and he knows how to write it and things of that nature. So, and we even took students to Egypt, which was his strength. But I think our strength is more in another way, working with students and dealing with community issues. And even the way we teach our classes, we focus on really, I would say, civil rights, black power movement, activist type of organizing throughout our history. So we've been able to engage our students in a way to get them inspired to do great things. We just had 7 students graduate, many of whom got involved and did some great things, did some great work that we were very proud of, and we're looking forward to the work that they do after this. But beyond that, African American Studies for us can always connect it to the community. And you really can't have a viable program without being connected to the community and different organizations that are doing things. So we're connected with the New Black Leadership Coalition. We've been working with all African People's Revolutionary Party, who will be hosting the African Liberation Day on May 27th. Kim designed a program that she can talk about in Cook County Prison, where we're teaching African American studies in the prison. So we're continuing to do that type of work and engaging and bringing people on campus.
What kind of response are you all getting from working with the leadership in the African American community folk? I mean, bringing this notion of African history and African culture and African study is something bigger than just a university, right?
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Lou, I should say that African American Studies as a discipline started out of activism. It was born of that. So it's an activist-oriented discipline. It's not dead matter, just read the past history. It's about taking action today. So all of our students are engaged. We find it so interesting that our students love us so because it's bigger than us. They think it's us, but it's really about us exposing them to themselves, to the strength and the power of themselves and the people who look like them. So we have students like in February, one of our students was over at, he runs the programming for the Salvation Army. So he had us come in there and teach Black Studies. People at their churches get involved and they lead Black Studies programs at their school. When you get this information and this empowerment, people want to pass it on. Two of our graduating students the other day. One, they do a program for teens, empowerment program for teens in the summer. Another one started a corner siphon type of thing.
Tell me,
Powerful.
Kim,
Church on the Nine is
the
called.
people who are doing what you're saying now, what are they telling folk when they go out? They say, "Hey, we're from Chicago State University, the African
No.
Studies." I mean, what is it that they're bringing to the community of substance that we can all be proud of?
I think they bring power. They bring empowerment, you know, and a pride and things like that. Just like the prison program we're doing. So we teach a class. I asked for maximum security. I wanted to teach in maximum security in the county because those guys are the forgotten.
Now, you're speaking about maybe, you know, I want the public to know this because people see African American studies, they don't see it in the context of mass incarceration.
Yeah.
They don't see it in the context of Michelle Alexander's book
Yeah,
and the
New Jim
broader
Crow.
discussion.
Right.
That's
And
right.
so now you all have gone to the Cook County Jail.
Yeah.
And so tell folk, how did you get there without getting arrested?
Well, you know, we haven't mentioned Paul Vallis. Paul Vallis came on to Chicago State as well to help kind of clean up things. And at one of the meetings, Paul Vallis was running his list of things. He's doing things with the prison system nationwide. And so he was talking the federal system. So he was talking about that. And when we left, you know, I'm always thinking about how we can make connections that help the issues we want to deal with. So when we left later from a meeting we had with him before he was on at Chicago State, he was just putting out feelers to see if he would come on. We had a meeting. He talked about some work he was doing. I texted him that night and told him about I wanted to put a library in Division 10 because I was sending some of the guys
Division
books.
10, so folk will know.
Division 9, 10, and 11, maximum
That's the
security.
Cook County, that's the maximum
That's right.
security
Sure.
division.
That's
right.
Yeah, I want the public to know.
Yeah.
You know,
That's right.
everybody said 9, 10, they say that's the numbers. Wait a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
that's
So
the
whenever
Yeah.
whenever we talk to somebody about working with that particular population of inmates, people were saying, "Wow," you know, because nobody wants to work with them. When I mentioned it to Vallis, he put me in touch with his assistant Sam, who put me in touch with somebody at the prison system who runs the educational program. They're doing a great thing in there, although it's prison. You know, it can't be great because it's prison, but they have an educational wing now in Division 10, a tier that they have there. And on that tier, if you're involved in educational programming, you can be on the tier. You have to have no incidents. So we're teaching African American studies. The guys are loving it. Even after our first class, Lou, they asked us, could we stay longer and could we come more often?
That's
They
right.
started talking about doing a petition, writing a letter. We
Yeah.
said we can't do that, but they love
The
learning
whole
about
place is
themselves.
buzzing. The whole place is buzzing.
Yeah, everybody wants to get
Yeah.
into the program. They love learning about themselves.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, we're gonna take a break because you have me excited now, you know, and because I think mass incarceration is something we ought to be talking about.
Yeah.
But then not just here, but in
Right.
the African world.
That's
That's
right.
right.
We're gonna come right back, man. This is great. Thank you so much for being
Thank
you.
here.
Thank you
All
for
right.
Yeah, we got your ass. Yo, come on, Lord. Got your ass on camera. What you gonna shoot us for? You pull that gun on us, we got your ass on camera, nigga.
bro. Hey, say you finna shoot up, you pull out that shit, bro.
Come on, Lord. Come on, God. Get it back. Get back. Man, fuck, we ain't did shit. Fuck is y'all doing? Don't you bite me. Come on, man. Don't fucking bite me. You just punched the man. What the fuck?
6 follow me, car 39 or block the right shot now.
Yeah, I am called back up.
For one motherfucker? Y'all scary as hell.
39.
Right, yeah.
Now let's get back to mass incarceration.
Yeah.
The work that you're doing over, the beginning work that you're doing over at the Cook County Jail, working with inmates on maximum security.
That's right.
Division 9, 10, and 11 are maximum security wings. And tell us a little bit more about that.
It's an introduction. It's our same introduction to African American Studies class that we teach at Chicago State. We took that to the prison to teach it to the guys in there. You know what, Lou, what I found personally for African American Studies, what it did for me is fortified me, right? It made me, it was the only place in academia that welcomed me. So it's a place I first began to respect structured education. So I thought about how the system has failed these guys in prison. The guys who are locked up, most of those people, the educational system has failed those men. So we wanted to kind of try to go and fill in what they missed in education. We wanted to go give them back to themselves by teaching them African American Studies in the prison. They love it. The guys are excited. They're very excited. The prison is buzzing. Other people from other divisions are trying to get into the program, so much so that we even expanded our time there. They were asking for more days, more hours, which we couldn't do since it's just the two of us. But this is just a pilot program that we're doing to create the curriculum and the model. And we're calling other people. We're bringing other people. We hope to have you there. We're bringing other people in to expose these young fellas to African American Studies and to strong
tell
black
our
men.
listening and our viewing audience, I mean, how does this tie into mass incarceration, the overall problem? You know, we have 2 million people under lock and key in this country.
That's right.
Most of them are African American. The Illinois prison system, as I speak with you today, is almost 50% black, though in the total state population, we're less than 20%.
Right.
And at the end of the day, reaching out, bringing this wisdom, knowledge into the prison system, how does that affect overall the situation today about African Americans, incarceration, jail, you name it?
We can't talk about the problems in our community without talking about the prison industrial complex. And the impact that it's had on our communities. And even in dealing with the prison industrial complex, you can't really deal with it. You can't deal with just the reason why people are in prison. You have to get to really how did they get there, and what the root causes of it. And one of the things that we understand is that, you know, it's a failure of education. And it's not simply getting degrees, diplomas and degrees, it's the type of education. So we know that, you know, and this is even the reason why you have Africana Studies. It's the reason we have it is we know that it's a corrective to the failure of the American educational system.
You're saying African studies is a corrective.
That's right.
Yes.
I want to make sure
To higher
that the
education
audience
in America.
is a corrective.
Of corrective to
And
higher
how-
education.
now, what do you
in
mean
America.
corrective?
Well, we know that, so for years in this country, it was been taught that black people had no culture, no civilization. For years in this country, in higher education, people would take classes, whether it's political science, sociology, history, and they would not learn about themselves. And not only that, not only would they not learn about themselves, but they would not address the problems that our community faces. So anybody who has any valuable education, that should allow you to identify problems and solve problems, particularly for beginning where you reside.
Right.
That's where the first problem. That's how you should be able to solve problems. You should be able to identify them and be able to solve them. That's education. And so for Africana Studies, that's the focus of it. And it's useless if it doesn't do that. That's what we should be trying to do. So we're getting these young men to think about things in a way that they probably never thought about before.
Well, let me ask you this, Kim. I call you Dr. Kim too. Dr. Kim and Dr. Kelly.
Okay.
All right, let me say this. Then what do we do? And I know I have had the good fortune of working with you on some of the projects of violence.
That's right.
You know, how does Africana Study help us understand the violence problem in Chicago? How does it help the people who are committing the violence? What are we doing about them? How do we explain them in the context of the history of African civilization and development? You just can't take it and put it aside. I think it's all interconnected.
I think you just hit the key word in their context, and we contextualize it for them. Because, you know, we're not, some of these phrases young men use now saying they're savages. You're not savage. You weren't born a savage, right? That's not how we we were raised. That's not how our culture. So we want to understand, and the concept we talk about a lot is abstract violence.
Right.
And that
What's abstract violence?
Abstract violence. So abstract violence is the failure, deliberate or otherwise, for people to have the resources to live have a good quality of life. So that's physical violence. but it also is a failure of education. It's also no health care. It's also food deserts. It's also redlining. All those things come together and do violent things to people. Even before they decide to pick up a gun or a knife or get in any kind of beef, those people are being confronted every day with violence, and that's not physical.
So what we do is we're trying to educate. I'm currently working on a documentary called My Bad, right? And it's an exploration of conflict resolution. And in order to deal with the violence, we have to understand what violence is. Violence is when you hurt somebody, right? So it's not just you choke me out or shoot me. Violence is also if you're doing harm to me. So if you miseducate me, if you poorly educate me, that's violence. Because when I grow up or when I enter the world, I'm not going to be able to eat. I'm not going to be able to have basic sustenance.
No jobs.
Have the things that the average person have because of, just like when you kidnap somebody or you torture somebody or abuse somebody, all of those things are forms of violence. Education, food deserts, all of those things fit into that same understanding of violence. And so when we see these young men out here shooting, I clearly understand them. That's why I wanted to go to maximum security to work with those guys, because those guys are usually, to be honest, and that this is bothersome for people, but those are usually the strong guys from the community. Those are the guys who are fighting back. They're fighting back in ways that they know, in ways that are probably, that are definitely wrong.
You know what I always say, Dr. Kemp, I always say, there are two victims in every criminal incident. Person who gets injured.
That's right.
In one way or the other, and the person who has perpetrated the injury.
That's right.
That's right.
And tragically in Chicago, what happens is that somebody gets killed.
Yeah.
You go to the funeral and you got somebody laying my English, laying in a casket, right?
That's right.
And then you got a family there and they are, bereaving the dead. And then you leave the funeral and go over to Division 10 and Division 11.
That's right.
And you got to deal with the person that put the person in the casket.
That's right.
Because somebody is coming on visiting day.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mama, grandmama, daddy, because that person may be locked up for the next 40 years.
That's right.
And that family of that person is going to be hurt. Those children will go see daddy in the state prison. The other folk will be grieving the funeral folk. All that's tied in.
That's right.
And so your work is so important.
But it goes back to the work that you were doing and helping us doing when we were at Chicago State talking about reentry and trying to organize and devise a good reentry program. One of the things that we know that process has to start while they are incarcerated. And even after they get out, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to help people reenter.
Let me tell you something that a guy said to us just 2 days ago at the class we taught. He said afterwards he's kind of lingering behind the line as the guard is waiting to take him back, right? And then he said, you okay? Y'all not nervous about teaching us this? And we were like, nervous? No. Then he said, they don't, this is some deep stuff. They don't want us to know this. He said, to be honest, if I had known this before I came in here, you probably would have never met me. I wouldn't even be here. He said, there's some powerful stuff. And they're very interested.
Hold it right there. You should mark that in your calendar of achievements. Because what he really said was, if I would have known what Africana Studies was teaching us about who I am, I would have had another assessment of what I did. I would not just have shot or robbed or killed my brother. I would have thought differently.
This same cohort took a class in memoir writing where they wrote a piece of their story, right? That was powerful because you got to think. So if you make me angry, I was going to say another word, but I don't know if we're allowed to. But if you make me mad,
no, you're not allowed to.
If you make me mad, Lou, I could say some. I was an English major, so I could say some words back to you that could hurt you, that can make you feel small, that can make you feel what you made me feel. I have language as a tool. They don't have language as a tool. They're not well educated. They don't have language as a tool.
Well, what they don't, and then I'm going to move into, I got to talk about the women's the African women's situation before you get off of this
Okay.
program
Yeah,
today.
okay.
But I want to say, you know what the most used word in like the gang language is? I taught gangs and community violence. And I've dealt with gang leaders for years. Disrespect.
Disrespect.
They say, dude, I went out and robbed him. And we say, why did you rob him? You say, because he didn't respect me.
That's
Well,
right.
what did he do? I didn't like the tone of voice.
That's right.
All of that goes
All
into
of
it.
it. All
Look,
of it.
I need your help
Yes.
because we're putting together an African Women's Forum, a forum on revolutionary African women,
Good.
from Rosa Parks to Ella Baker, from Ella Baker, you know, to Assata Shakur.
Okay.
And I happen to know that you have a beautiful young daughter
Yes.
by the name of Assata, and I know who she was named after. And I want the public to know that we're going to be working on that project, and we're going to do a whole forum
Good.
with you here
Thank you.
on African American women
Good.
and their role and relationship to advancing the cause of liberation in our people.
Great.
Yes.
Great.
Dr. Kelly Harris, what do you think about the role of the revolutionary African woman then, now, and in the future?
I think, well, that's a very important forum that they're going to have, because I think one of the problems when we have how history has been taught, mainstream and even in African studies, we haven't taught it right, because women have played such a strategic role, important role in all our movements, but yet they've been marginalized when we talk about them. Whether it's even the real Rosa Parks, and when her activism started, or Ella Baker and who she was mentored by, and then we get into Pauli Murray and Daisy Lampkin and Nannie Helen Burroughs, and it's just so many black women who have been at the forefront
People
of
don't
educating
know.
us.
People
Dr.
don't know.
Yeah, they
Dr.
don't know.
Kelly Harris, they don't know that Rosa Parks was no pacifist.
No,
Right.
I mean,
right.
No.
In fact,
Her
I-
heroes were Marcus Garvey and
Wait
Malcolm
a minute,
X.
I'm telling you, and
Yeah.
Louis Farrakhan.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Ella Baker was phenomenal.
Yes.
I mean, she basically at one point ran SCLC
She did.
before they ran her out of there.
She did.
You
Kelly
know, when
just
Dr.
came
King,
across
yeah.
this information when he was doing something on the March on Washington. And then we
Oh,
find
yes,
out in
yes.
Chicago at a
Yes.
meeting, a community meeting in Chicago, it was a lady here
March
who
on
came up
Washington
with that
movement.
idea.
March
A
on
lady, a
Washington
lady
movement.
from the
That's
community stood up and said,
1941.
well, we're going to, and
you
she
have to
suggested
know,
that.
In Chicago today, Diane Bevel here,
Yeah.
one of the heroines of the movement lives here.
Absolutely.
You know, in my years in Mississippi, as a civil rights lawyer, I represented Fannie Lou Hamer. In fact, I was
wow.
one of the honorary pallbearers at her funeral.
Wow.
And I knew her for a number
Wow.
of years. I've known so many outstanding, and I was a lawyer, one of the lawyers for Assata Shakur.
That's it.
So I have known so
That's
many
right.
dynamic African
That's
American
right.
women. Look, there is never enough time,
Right.
you know, because you all have a wealth of information. Would you like to say something? We're going to close this out, but you'll be back.
Yes,
Yeah.
we'll be back. Say something about the New Black Leadership Coalition and that event that's going on.
June
That's one
24th.
organization that
June
we work with.
24th, the New Black Leadership Coalition. It's a coalition of a lot of different leaders and activists who've been organizing for years. They're having a meeting with grassroots activists and leaders on June 24th to really have a
Where is it gonna be?
come to heart meeting. That's a good question. I should have known.
I'll let
That's
you
a good
know
question. We let you
on the next show.
On the next show.
Right, so that's right.
No, but I think it's important. I just wanted them to know that you're reaching out for the New Black Leadership. Many people who are in that organization, Michael Muhammad, Gregory
Yeah.
Saint,
Been mentored by you too.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
known them for
Everybody.
many
Chairman Fred.
years.
Chairman Fred.
Chairman Fred, love him.
Yeah.
I love his mother, and so I'm going to look forward to that. And I'm going to look forward to getting you all. Well, you're going to be back on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to be giving us updates, and when we get into the African American woman, we want to send that all over the country. It's going to be on Facebook
Absolutely.
Live. It's going to be on KN TV, and I want African American women. We want to advertise so they'll tune in and see what's happening. Keep us posted on what you're doing
will.
in
We
the
will.
security divisions of the Cook County Jail. That's so very important.
This
because
show is very important. Thank
Yeah,
you for
thank
doing
you.
this Beyond the
Thank
Gun.
you.
So
Yeah.
so people can be reminded that there is something beyond the gun.
That's
Yeah,
right.
no, man, you got it right.
Yeah.
And I think that, only through people like yourself who've been so inspirational to me and you've been so supportive, we are going to be working forever.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And that means
Yes.
I'll be around forever, okay?
That's
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so very much. Beyond